Okay. So, ready to dive into something that's been like a total game changer for me.
Always. Let's hear it.
It's thinking in English.
Hmm.
And I know that sounds kind of basic, but it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
imagine ditching that mental translator in your head
Yeah.
and just having conversations just flow so easily.
Uh-huh.
That's the power we're going to unlock today. And
Awesome.
trust me, it's a whole new level of fluency and confidence.
For sure.
We've got a ton of research and expert opinions to go through,
Okay.
including this great podcast, Think Straight.
I love that podcast.
Yeah, so are you ready to think straight to fluency?
Let's do it.
Okay.
I'm excited. One thing I think is so fascinating that they highlighted is the impact of thinking in English on your response time in conversations.
Right.
Like, it's not just about knowing the words.
Yeah.
It's about how quickly your brain can access and use them.
Yeah, and it's almost like when you're not having to translate,
Yeah.
you're rewiring your brain
Totally.
to process English like a native speaker would.
It's like shedding a skin almost.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And it boosts your confidence too, because you're not,
Right.
fumbling for words or, feeling self-conscious about your grammar or anything like that.
And I used to think that confidence came after fluency,
Right.
but it seems like they go hand in hand.
Oh, totally. They feed each other for sure.
But okay, how do we actually get to that point?
Yeah, that's the question.
It's not like we could just flip a switch in our brain overnight.
Exactly. It's a process for sure.
Right.
One technique I think they suggested that I thought was interesting was narrating your day in English.
Oh, yeah.
So basically you become your own inner commentator.
I've tried this, and it's surprisingly effective.
Yeah,
It feels a little weird at first,
totally.
but it really helps solidify vocabulary
Right.
and sentence structure.
Yes, and like they said you don't have to,
Yeah,
narrate your entire day in like Shakespearean prose or something.
of course not.
Like just short bursts like making coffee,
Right,
checking emails.
right. Just those.
Just the little things.
Yeah, you're forming the habit.
Yeah, and it's like building a mental muscle.
Exactly.
Exactly. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah. And another one they talked about was labeling objects.
Oh, yeah, the classic sticky note strategy.
The sticky note strategy. What I think is cool about that is like you're creating direct associations between the object and its English name.
Mm,
So you're bypassing translation entirely.
right.
So instead of seeing a mesa and thinking table,
Mm.
you're directly connecting the image of the table with the word table in English.
Yeah,
It's a simple but powerful visual cue.
totally.
And then another thing they talked about was visualization,
Yes.
which is like imagine yourself in different scenarios like ordering food, giving a presentation, and you mentally rehearse the conversation in English.
Right.
I think research has shown that like visualizing an action activates a lot of the same brain regions
Right?
as actually performing it.
Oh, wow.
So you're like prepping your brain for those real life interactions.
It's like a dress rehearsal for your brain.
totally a dress rehearsal. I love that.
Yeah.
So we've talked about like retraining our brains,
Yeah.
but what about expanding our vocabulary?
Right, because that seems pretty crucial
Totally.
for actually being able to think in English.
Oh, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. They emphasized learning vocabulary in context
Okay.
rather than just memorizing isolated words.
Right.
So instead of just like apple, banana, orange,
Mm.
you're learning phrases like, I enjoy eating a banana for breakfast.
This makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between seeing a word in the dictionary
Exactly.
versus hearing it used in an actual conversation.
Yes.
It makes it so much more memorable.
Yeah. And it brings it to life.
Yeah.
And they also highlighted learning phrases and expressions, not just individual words.
Okay.
So like mastering phrases like, on the other hand, or in my opinion, not only adds sophistication to your speech, but it also helps you think in chunks of meaning. You're
Yeah.
moving beyond that word-by-word approach.
It's like learning the choreography of a dance instead of just the steps.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. And of course, they emphasize that immersion is key.
Right.
You need to surround yourself with English as much as possible to truly solidify those language skills.
Yeah.
So they suggest switching your phone and social media to English.
Yeah, even if you just pick up a few new words or phrases each day, it all adds up.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment where your brain is constantly processing English, even passively.
Right. And then Think Straight was also a big advocate for enjoying English media.
Yes.
So movies, shows, music, even podcasts.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think maybe they mentioned our show.
Maybe.
But it's such a fun and engaging way to absorb language naturally.
Totally. It's not just learning vocabulary and grammar. It's like
Mhm.
you're picking up on accents,
Mhm.
slang, colloquialisms, all of those subtle nuances
Right.
that make you sound more like a native speaker.
And it's just enjoyable.
Okay, but here's a technique they mentioned that I was a little hesitant about at first.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Self-talk.
Yes.
Talking to yourself in English.
The power of self-talk.
I'll admit I've caught myself doing this more and more lately.
Really?
Sometimes I'm like walking down the street,
Mm.
having a full-blown conversation with myself in my head.
Silently, of course.
Silently, of course.
Yeah.
But
It might feel silly at first,
it does.
but it's so effective.
Yeah.
It allows you to practice forming sentences and expressing your thoughts
Uh-huh.
without fear of judgment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it helps you get comfortable with the sound of your own voice.
Yes.
Speaking English,
Exactly.
which can be a big confidence booster.
Right. So we've talked about all these techniques, which sound great in theory,
Right.
but let's be real.
Yeah.
Learning a new language, especially to the point of thinking in it, can be tough.
It can be really tough. So what about the challenges?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get discouraged right when you hit those inevitable bumps in the road.
For sure. For sure.
So I'm curious, what did Think Straight suggest for overcoming those challenges?
Their advice was refreshingly simple. Be consistent and be patient. So, start small. Maybe dedicate 5 minutes a day to practice
Right.
and gradually increase that time as you feel more comfortable.
This is where that whole marathon, not a sprint analogy comes in.
Totally, yeah.
It's about those small, consistent actions
Right.
that lead to the big results over time.
Exactly. And they also emphasize that it's okay to make mistakes.
Okay.
It's okay to mix in your native language at first.
Oh, good.
Like, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress.
I like that.
You know, and they even pointed out that native English speakers don't expect perfection from learners.
It's just such a relief. It
Yeah.
really takes the pressure off.
Yeah,
And then you can just focus on communication.
exactly. They also cautioned against relying too heavily on translation,
Yes.
which, as we discussed, can create a mental barrier.
It's like trying to navigate a new city.
Yeah,
With a map that's in a language you don't understand.
right.
You'll eventually get there, but it's so much slower.
Yes, it's very inefficient.
And frustrating.
Exactly.
Okay, so what else?
Another thing they pointed out was the pitfall of focusing too much on grammar rules.
This one's interesting. I always thought grammar was like the foundation of language learning.
While grammar is important,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be the sole focus,
Okay.
especially when you're trying to develop the ability to think in English.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It's like trying to learn how to play a song by just reading the sheet music.
Yes.
You need to actually play the instrument
Right.
to feel the rhythm
You need to experience the
and
music.
experience the music.
Yeah.
So grammar is like the sheet music.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking in English is about playing the song.
Exactly. So instead of getting bogged down in the technicalities,
Mm.
focus on using the language, communicating, making yourself understood.
It's about letting go of that need for perfection
Yeah.
and embracing the joy of expressing yourself.
Exactly.
It sounds like Think Straight is advocating for a more intuitive and experiential approach to language learning
Yes.
rather than like a purely academic one.
I think so. They really emphasize that language is at its core a tool for communication and connection.
Right.
And when you can think in English, you unlock a whole new level of fluency, confidence, and engagement with the world around you.
It's so freeing to think of it that way, right?
Yeah,
Like as this organic process of exploration and connection
exactly.
rather than just a rigid set of rules to memorize.
I think so too.
Okay, so they really hit on some key points about the mindset shifts
Yes.
that we need to make
Uh-huh.
to successfully make this transition to thinking in English.
Yeah,
So did they offer any final words of wisdom?
they did. They wrapped up with a message that I think perfectly encapsulates the essence of language learning. Be patient with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
This journey's a marathon, not a sprint, and it's filled with twists and turns and unexpected detours.
And I think that's something a lot of language learners struggle with.
I agree.
It's like we see these success stories and we want to achieve that level of fluency overnight.
Right.
And we forget that behind every overnight success
Yes.
are months, if not years, of consistent effort, dedication, and, yeah, even setbacks.
And it's about embracing the entire journey, the
Right.
challenges, the triumphs,
Yeah.
the moments of frustration, and
Yeah.
the bursts of excitement when you finally grasp a new concept or have like a breakthrough conversation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Oh, that's so
There's a whole
important.
community
Yes,
of language learners out there
for sure.
who are going through the same ups and downs.
It's
So connect with them, share your experiences, learn from each other.
it's like having a team of cheerleaders, coaches, and fellow adventurers all rolled into one.
Exactly.
Ah,
We've covered so much ground today,
I know, it's a lot.
from practical techniques to mindset shifts to inspiring success stories.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up this first part of our deep dive into thinking in English,
Okay.
what's the one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's just starting out?
That's a good question. I would say pick one technique that resonates with you and commit to it, even if it's just for 5 minutes a day.
Right.
You know, label those sticky notes,
Yeah.
narrate your commute, find a language exchange partner, like dive into a good book or movie in English, whatever sparks your interest
Right.
and gets you excited